Good morning, boys and girls. My name is Miss Summer, and I'm your host. This is your teacher, Miss Miriam. Today, we'll find out what it's like to travel to a new land.
I'm Miss Miriam, and today's lesson is titled Sailing to a New Land. Today, we will learn about what Tolly and Bjorn did while sailing. We will also learn what happens when they finally reach their new home. Before we begin, let's look back at our chart from yesterday and quickly review what we've already learned. Miss Summer, can you share what you already know about the Vikings?
Sure. So we already learned that cargo ships were used for trade and long ships were used for raid. We also learned that Viking ships are strong and powerful because of how they're built.
Thank you, Miss Summer. I am learning so much about the Vikings and how they travel. Are there some new things you want to learn today?
Yes. So I want to know, what did the boys do while traveling on the ship? I'd also like to know if the boys are greeted by their families when they arrive to their new home.
Oh, those are some great questions, Miss Summer. I would love to learn the answer to those questions also. But before we get started with our reading, let's begin by first discussing the meaning of some very important vocabulary words that we will reference in this lesson. Are you ready, boys and girls? Great. Miss Summer, how about you?
I love learning new words. Let's go.
All right, let's get started. So our first word is accurate. Say accurate.
Accurate.
Great job. So accurate means something is correct. So let's use our gesture. Our picture here shows a check mark. So for this, let's use a gesture of doing our index finger. And we're going to make a check mark when we hear the word accurate. Danny worked hard at the problem and was confident in saying that his answer was accurate.
Wow. Well, my work is always accurate.
Are you sure about that?
Yes. Right, boys and girls? Yes, they agree. They agree.
That's not what I'm hearing, but okay, let's move on to the next word. All right, our next word is enabled. Say enabled.
Enabled.
Great job, boys and girls. Enable means to make possible. So we can look at our picture here and see the oars enabled the Vikings to travel. So we're going to pretend we have our oars, because that's enabling us to travel. So the oars on the Vikings longship enabled them to sail, like in the picture.
Hey, could you give me $1,000 and enable me to buy a MacBook?
Are you serious?
Yes.
You better add that to your Christmas list, because I cannot enable you with that much money.
Well, it was worth a try.
Yeah, okay. Moving on to our next word, boys and girls. Our next word is invaluable. Say invaluable.
Invaluable.
Great job. Invaluable means something is priceless or very useful. So as we see here with these tools, they were very useful or invaluable to the Vikings, as well as this sword. So for invaluable, let's cross our hands like this and put it over our heart. Invaluable. Swords, like this one, and other tools were invaluable to the Viking survival. Great job. Let's go on to our next word. Our next word is mingling. Say mingling.
Mingling.
Great job. Mingling is moving around and interacting with a group. So as we see here, the Vikings were mingling around the harbor. Okay, let's pretend that we're mingling around. So we just be walking around. Hey, what's going on? Hey,
how are you?
Up? Great to see you. All right, that'll help us remember the word mingling. Remember, many of the villagers are mingling around the harbor to see what is on the Viking ship.
I think I would like to set sail on a Viking ship and mingle with all the travelers.
That does sound like fun. Right, boys and girls? Yes. All right, let's look at our last word. Now, our last word is one that the boys and girls probably know,
okay,
but they've never heard about it like this before.
Okay.
So our word is tripod. Say tripod.
Tripod.
Great job. So a tripod, and I actually brought one with my phone already on here. So a tripod is a three-legged support or stand for a piece of equipment. And I actually brought it with me and have my phone here. So it will actually support my phone, and I can use it to take selfies or videos. All right, so okay, I think that's enough with the selfie poses.
Sorry, boys and girls.
Excuse her, boys and girls.
Sorry.
All right, the Vikings, of course, did not have a phone or cameras, but as we will hear in our story today, they did use tripods like this one you see here in the picture. Notice that it's holding the cauldron up. So notice it has 3 support legs and it's holding the cauldron or a pot used for cooking. All right, so that was our vocabulary words. Now let's get ready to listen carefully and hear more about Bjorn and Tolly's journey and what happens when they finally reach their new home. Girls and boys, read along with us and look at the pictures as we read. Let's get started. We needed the wind to speed us on our way, having asked New York to give us strong winds and calm seas. The sailors began to row with all their might out into the ocean in a northerly direction. Depending on the winds, our journey could take anywhere from 10 to 20 days to complete. On board, there was one sailor who had already journeyed to Iceland several times before. His knowledge of the ocean waters was invaluable or very useful, and he clearly ruled the roost. As we traveled, other sailors watched the ocean's currents, observed the behaviors of the seabirds and sea mammals, and looked to the stars and the position of the sun for direction. All of this enabled them to steer an accurate course across the ocean. Question time! What do you think rule the roost mean as used in this sentence? His knowledge of the ocean waters was invaluable or very useful, and he clearly ruled the roost. What do you think, boys and girls? Oh, yes. Miss Summer, can you tell me what they said?
Yes, the boys and girls said that ruled the roost means he was in charge because he knew so much about the ocean and sailing.
That does make sense. Great job, boys and girls. Let's continue reading. After we lost sight of land, the sailors stopped rowing, and just as Tolly had said they would, they raised the mainsail. I noticed that they were using a weather vane to show the wind direction. As the day progressed, the wind picked up and we began to move swiftly across the ocean. Tolly and I were not just passengers, we had work to do on board the ship. We were responsible for adding to the food supplies by fishing, as well as helping to cook. As the sun began to set on our first day on board the ship, Tolly and I fished and talked about home. We were lucky. Within a short time, we caught several large white fish. We gutted and deboned them and then cut them up into pieces ready to be placed into a large cooking pot. Fire for cooking was started in a large cauldron. The cauldron was suspended from the iron tripod. A smaller pot for cooking was hung over the fire. We had a plentiful supply of salted and smoked meat on board. It was stored in several large dry barrels. We would be able to make bread each day as well, and we had some chickens too. Fresh water was kept in special barrels that were sealed to keep out salt water. As one day led to another, Tolly and I quickly established a routine on board the ship. We began the day by fishing. Then we would wash and help prepare breakfast for the crew and the others on board. After breakfast, we would help clean the deck and give out supplies of drinking water. We would tend to the fire in the cauldron, and when late afternoon came, we would once again cast our fishing lines into the ocean. One evening when we were fishing, Tolly told me an interesting story about the place that would soon be our new home. Do you know, Bjorn, who was the first successful Viking to settle in Iceland? Tolly asked. I told Tolly that I could not remember. He shook his head, winked at me, then continued. It was the valiant Ingolfur Arnarsson, also known as just Ingolf. Others had tried before, but had failed. He was determined to succeed. Ingolf did not know where the best place to settle was, so he asked the gods to help him. He cast wooden pots into the ocean and waited for them to wash ashore. When they did, he began to build the settlement we now call Reykjavik on that very spot. Tolly loved to talk, and he often had stories about our brave warriors and explorers. Much to Tolly's disappointment, We did not encounter a sea monster on our voyage. One day, however, a large fish flew right out of the water while we were fishing and scared us both to death. The wind was with us all the way, and after 2 days of sailing north, we shifted our course and sailed west. Apart from 2 nights of heavy rain, our journey was easy and uneventful. We completed our voyage in good time, catching our first sight of land at midday on the 14th day. As we sailed closer to Reykjavik, we could see mountains rising up into the clouds, some with snow still coating the tops, as well as large areas of beautiful green pastureland. The houses had green grass growing right on top of the roofs, as if the fields were growing onto them. There wasn't an impressive wharf like the one at our hometown. Instead, there was a small, muddy harbor area. A large group of people stood in the mud waiting for our ship to arrive. As we approached, I could tell that many of them were simply curious bystanders. All the people in Iceland lived on farms in the countryside. A sailor who had been to Iceland before told us that it was always exciting for the Icelanders when a ship from Norway arrived. People gathered at the shore to see what was happening, get news from Norway, and see whether there were any goods to be traded. It's question time! What do Bjorn and Tolly see when they first spot the land of Iceland? What do you think, boys and girls? Exactly. The boys and girls know. Do you know, Miss Summer?
Of course I do. I heard them. They said that they saw houses with grass growing on the roof and a muddy harbor.
That's right. Great job helping Miss Summer out, boys and girls. I don't know if I would like to live in a house with grass on top. What if an animal ate its way through my roof?
Ugh, that's kind of scary.
Yes. Okay, let's get back to the story.
Okay.
Tolly and I disembarked the ship and walked toward the crowds of people. Although we didn't know anyone, the inhabitants of this new land looked strangely familiar. They looked and talked just like the people back home. We walked slowly, mingling with the crowd and taking in the new sights and sounds. Twice we had to explain to a small boy that we were not interested in buying a falcon that he appeared to be selling. Although Tolly did stop for a moment to consider whether or not it would be advantageous for him to own a bird of prey. We had never met our uncles Valley and Toonie, as they had left our homeland before we were born. In many ways, they would be our newly adopted fathers. Suddenly, a man the size of a bear with a long, untrimmed beard came charging toward us. He grabbed hold of me and then clapped Tolly hard on the back. "Nephews, welcome to Iceland. Not much I know, but you'll get to like it. I would know you anywhere. I'm your Uncle Valley," he exclaimed and then laughed out loud. "How was your journey? How are your parents? Your cousins cannot wait to meet you. I expect you are hungry." Uncle Valley continued to talk and ask questions all at the same time. He did not seem to need any answers to his questions, and so Tolly and I simply nodded our agreement or agreed with almost everything he said as we followed him through the streets of our new town. Our legs felt very shaky as we walked through the muddy streets. Having been at sea for so many days, we still had our sea legs and were not yet used to firm ground. It was a strange feeling, and on a number of occasions, I thought I was going to fall flat on my face in the mud. After several minutes of walking through the same kind of narrow, muddy streets as the ones we had left behind, I began to hear some familiar sounds. We were approaching Uncle Valley's forge. He was a blacksmith like my father, and I would be working as an apprentice with him and his son Ivar, whereas Tolly would be farming with Uncle Toonie and his family. As we approached my uncle's longhouse, I could see immediately that it was quite different from our house at home. It was one of the longhouses that had grass growing right on top of it. "I wonder if they graze their cows up there," Tolly whispered with a grin on his face. "These turf homes keep us nice and warm," Uncle Toonie explained as he noticed our reaction to the house. "Come inside. There are many people waiting to meet you." As we entered my uncle's home, I could see immediately that, although the outside was different, the inside was not. It contained one long, dimly lit central hall. There was also a large hearth around which people were sitting. Once inside, I caught the smell of something really good. The aroma seemed to be coming from a large iron pot suspended above the hearth. I just hoped it wasn't fish. Immediately, a lady, a little older than my mother, ran toward us. "Welcome to your new home. I'm your Aunt Trid," she smiled and then turned to call to the rest of the family. "Toonie, come and meet your nephews. Astrid, Hilda, Ralph, Ivar, Sigrid, come and meet your cousins." Within seconds, we were surrounded by, until now, unknown family members. Uncle Toonie stepped forward and greeted us. I was surprised by how much he looked like my father. He was quite like him too. Then a number of girls and boys of various ages stepped forward to say hello. Finally, an older lady who was introduced to us as Grandmother Gudrun beckoned us toward the hearth. As we sat together on the floor, she began to serve us the evening meal. It was a beef stew, and it tasted really good. Tully and I ate eagerly. Once we had eaten, Aunt Trid led us toward 2 raised earthen beds in the very back of the longhouse. They were covered in animal furs. "You should rest," she said softly. "You have had a long journey. Tomorrow your new life with us will begin." Then she smiled and walked away. Tully responded by throwing himself down upon his new bed and immediately falling asleep. I sat in the darkness for a long time and thought about my childhood days with my family, my journey to my new home, and all the things that might lie ahead. I knew that when I woke the next day, I would no longer be a child. All right, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed our story today. Now let's see if we can remember some of the details from our story. It's question time.
I love question time. I'm sure the boys and girls will know all of the answers too.
Great. Let's get started. So our first question is, describe Bjorn and Tully's journey aboard the ship bound for Iceland. Boys and girls, can you describe or tell me about the journey? Miss Summer, can you describe the journey? You may have to help her out, boys and girls.
Thank you. So, the boys and girls said that it's relatively easy. They help with the work to be done, such as fishing, cooking, and there was one more thing. Oh yeah, cleaning the deck. Great job.
That's right. Thanks for helping her out, boys and girls. And good job trying, Miss Summer.
Thank you so much.
All right, our next question says, why do Bjorn and Tully ask Njord to give them strong winds? Do you remember, boys and girls? That's it. What about you, Miss Summer? Do you know?
I think I remember this one.
Good.
They believe that there are many gods that can help them. What was that? Oh, and strong winds are invaluable, good job, when traveling on a sailing ship.
Yes, that's right, and great job using that vocabulary word, invaluable. Girls and boys, I think you know all these answers. Let's try another one. The Vikings were known as expert sailors. Do the sailors in this story sound like experts? Experts mean they know everything about it. Why do you think that or not? That makes sense. Miss Summer, can you help us out? What did the boys and girls say?
Yeah, so the boys and girls said that the sailors know how to steer an accurate course by using the stars and animals to guide them and successfully make it to Iceland.
Wow, you have really been listening. And yes, these sailors sound like experts. I mean, after all, they did make it to Iceland safely.
Right.
Great job. All right, our next question says, how is Bjorn and Tully's new home in Iceland similar to their old one in Norway? Boys and girls, can you tell me how the homes were similar or the same? Yes. Can you go ahead and share that with Miss Summer?
Yes. Okay, so they said there's a central hall, there's a large hearth, there's earthen beds covered with furs. Oh yeah, good food is served and it's filled with a large family.
Wow. Boys and girls, you got them all right. So all these things were the same as their home in Norway. Great job, boys and girls. Great job with our questions. Now let's do a little word work with the word enabled. In the read aloud, you heard all of this enable them to steer an accurate course across the ocean. Say the word enabled with me. Enabled. Great job. Enable means to make something possible. Being close to the sea and the rivers enabled the Vikings to travel to new lands in their longships. Have you ever enabled someone to do something? Or have you ever been enabled by someone else to do something? Tell me about it. Oh, that's a good example. Miss Summer, what about you? Do you have an example?
I do. So once I was caught in a storm and I needed to get to my car, but I did not have an umbrella. But a stranger enabled me to get to my car without getting wet by loaning me their umbrella.
Oh, wow, that's a great example of someone enabling you to do something.
Yes.
Oh, I have an example too. I once gave a friend a ride in my car to work. I enabled her to get to work on time. Girls and boys, I know you have lots of examples of how you enabled someone. Thanks for sharing with us. Now, let's play a little game called Making Choices. So I'm going to say a word that will either be a synonym or it means the same, or a word that's the opposite or an antonym of the word enabled. If the word is synonym, you'll say synonym and give me a thumbs up. If the word is antonym, you'll say antonym and give me a thumbs down. Are you ready, boys and girls? I knew you were. Miss Summer, what about you?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, let's go. So our first word is blocked and enabled. Do those mean the same or are they different?
Yes, the boys and girls said those are antonyms.
That's right. Great job, boys and girls. All right, our next one is allowed and enabled. Are those synonyms or antonyms of each other?
They said that one kind of fast on this side.
Oh, what did they say?
They said those are synonyms. They mean the same.
Very good, boys and girls. That is correct. All right, let's look at our next one. Prevented and enabled. Are those synonyms or antonyms of each other?
The boys and girls said antonyms. They think those are opposites.
That is absolutely correct. Oh, let's do another one. What about the word permitted and enabled? Synonym or antonym?
Oh my goodness, they answered that
Wow,
one so fast. They
that
said
was
synonyms. I know.
Absolutely correct, boys and girls. You did such a great job with this word. Great job. All right, boys and girls, we have our KWL chart up. So let's go ahead and add some things that we learned, what we learned in today's lesson. Miss Summer, can you share some things that we learned?
Sure. So we learned that the boys helped with the work to be done, such as fishing, cooking, and cleaning the deck. We also learned that all of Bjorn and Tully's family is excited to see them. Their uncles, their aunts, and cousins were all excited.
Yes, everyone is excited to see them. Those were all great responses, and I'm sure the boys and girls learned a lot too, even more than what we've shared. Thank you for sharing. I mean, wow, boys and girls, you've just done such a good job with this lesson. We've had so much fun learning about the Vikings and setting sail with Bjorn and Tully. I hope you all enjoyed this journey as much as we did. Thanks so much for learning with us, boys and girls. I am so proud of you, and you should be proud too. Keep up the good work, boys and girls.
All rights and credits for today's lesson come from Core Knowledge Language Arts. We would like to thank Core Knowledge for publicly sharing these materials. Boys and girls, thanks for joining us today. I enjoyed learning about the Vikings with you. Stay tuned and keep learning.